Hi everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome back to my channel and another paper crafting video tutorial. Today we're going to create a couple of postage stamp themed Christmas cards with Tim Holtz and Simon Says stamp sets and coordinating dies. These new dies coordinate with the Tim Holtz stamps. We're going to be using some of my favorites, of course, and then using the waffle flower A2 size postage dies, which I always love. And I have gone ahead and die cut mine from some craft cardstock here. And we are going to get our crafty mat, our craft sticky mat down to hold our cardstock in place while we are stenciling. I'll be using Holiday Things, Tattered Christmas, and the Postmarks stamp sets and dies today. And these are going to be amazing additions to your crafty stash. First thing we're going to do is create our postage stamps. And I'm actually going to do this twice. We are going to take the stencil that coordinates with the waffle flower postage collage, and we're going to ink it up with lumberjack plaid first to give our postage stamps that nice base color. Once we have our lumberjack plaid, we are going to go in with ground espresso around the edges to deepen and darken. I always kind of feel like we're creating our foundation for our card by making a strong base that we can then build on with all of the adorable images from the Tattered Christmas and the Holiday Things stamps, as well, of course, as the postmarks, which you're going to want to use for everything. Going around the edges, that's just giving it that great grungy, dark, Christmassy look that is going to be amazing. Once we pull the stencil off, it's going to look awesome. Now, before I do pull that stencil off, I decided I wanted to go in with some of the previously released Tim Holtz rubber stamp backgrounds. He has some awesome text backgrounds. You guys know I love my background stamps, and I am going to go in with this scripty background from the Reflections set, and I'm going to use white pigment ink, and we're going to ink this in a couple of spots over the postage collage design. I like to leave the stencil in place, but you could remove the stencil and do this all over if you wanted to. So once I have this inked up, I like to use an acrylic block, and it can be very organic. It doesn't have to be perfect. At first, I thought I would just leave a couple spots without text, but then I decided to go ahead and fill in those extra areas. It does not matter if it's not perfect again. Now we're going to remove our stencil and give it a good clean and do this one more time. Look how awesome our postage stamps look. This is a fantastic base. Next, I am going to go ahead and take some of the holiday postmarks, and we're going to stamp those with black Nocturne ink in a couple of spots on our postage stamps. On one of these postage collage backgrounds, we are going to cut apart the postage stamps. On the other one, I will leave it as a solid background. There are coordinating dies for all of these images. However, some of them I am stamping directly onto my background here, and then we will be cutting out some of the seals and that kind of thing, other little like postage stickers to use as elements on our card. But I love that you can use it either way. You can use them with or without those coordinating dies. Next, I'm going to go ahead and stamp some of my images for this first card on the scraps of craft cardstock left from die cutting the postage collage background. I am using, again, that same Nocturne ink to stamp these images on craft. I like the craft on craft, even if it's going to be something that we need to add white to, because we're going to be using the Tim Holtz Distress pencils to add color to these images. Now, don't let my Halloween sweater throw you. I made these cards on a day that was in October, apparently. And then even though we're doing Christmas cards, so it happens. I'm stamping lots of the different images, trees, pine cones, Santa, etc. I'm going to grab my favorite distress pencils and start coloring in. Now, these are great. You can use them with water if you want to, but a lot of times I choose to just straight use them like pencils. And that's what I'm going to do here today. The images are pretty dainty, pretty small for the most part, and I find that I like the results just using them straight as pencils. This was the reason I was able to use that Nocturne ink, as it's not going to run with the pencils like an alcohol ink might. I did make a brief little boo-boo with my Santa. I picked the wrong color to color in the face, and so I actually had to restamp him. There was not a way to fix it. Generally, I do try to find a way to fix my images, but I did want to make mention of that because sometimes, you know, you might make a misstep. It does happen. I am not as familiar coloring on craft cardstock with these pencils as I am with other coloring mediums, and the color I thought would work really made Santa look like he had jaundice, and that wasn't really what I was going for. So I actually will dive back in and grab a little Tattered rose, and that worked fantastic for him. So even though you're going to see me color him in here, I kind of left that in because I do think that it is important to show that there are missteps along the way, and there's nothing wrong with that. It is all part of the creative process. So this was the mistake. The other thing I want to mention that is not a mistake, the pencil sharpener from Prismacolor, having that close by to keep your pencils sharp, especially when coloring in small areas, is so important, you guys. Otherwise, the tip gets really blunt, and this goes for any kind of pencil that you might be using. The sharper you can get your pencil, the easier it is to color. So see, I tried to fix and go over it. It was not going to fix. But see how Santa that was not the right color at all for any skin tone. So I just decided I would restamp Santa and it would be just fine. We're going to move on to the other images really quick. That's going to be our greenery of the holly branches and leaves. And something I thought was really fun, these stamped images have a lot of black work in them. But even with that, when you color over them, I find you still get amazing color and amazing results. I am absolutely obsessed with coloring on the Nina cardstock, the Desert Storm cardstock, pardon me. I think the results are so wonderful on this cardstock. I really love it. Like, look at the white on Santa's jacket and the cuffs of his pants and things. Isn't that amazing? That picket fence distress pencil is perfection. Now, I colored in this little branch here, but I'm going to have to save that for a different card because it actually does not work. I went ahead, colored it, and die cut it. It just didn't fit on my card, and sometimes that happens. Now, here's that Tattered rose. So much better on the Nina Desert Storm cardstock. Again, you just sometimes have to try things out and see which colors work. I should have tried it off to the side and I didn't. So we fixed it now and it's looking great. We still have the pine cone and the tree to color, and you might be thinking with that tree that we're not going to see the greenery of it, but I actually was so pleasantly surprised when adding the green to the tree how green it gets and still maintains all of the wonderful definition of the outline of the stamped image. So that was really fun to see. And of course, here's our black soot for Santa's boots. He definitely required the most coloring simply because you know, all the different colors required here. I kept it pretty simple everywhere else. That pine cone also is one of my personal favorites. I think it's really cute. And I did link to all of the individual pencils I used down below. I have mixed and matched my pencils from the sets. I don't keep them by set. I keep them actually in the tins by color because that's how I look for my pencils. I look for them by color instead of like which set they come in. And that just makes it easier for me when I go to color these in. Look how good that pine cone looks. I am just really pleasantly surprised and thrilled with how much I love coloring with these pencils. And of course, here's that green of that tree that I was talking about. And I wasn't super perfect with the coloring of this. You don't need to be. I wanted to pull that green out to the branches a little bit, even though there's not really an outline per se. Just kind of following the stamped lines in the stamped image to add that color to those areas. And it looks so good. Oh my gosh, I love, love, love it. We're going to take then those coordinating dies and we're going to die cut everything and we're going to put our first card together. So I am going to go ahead and stamp the snowflake right here on one of the postage blocks. Originally, I thought I might leave this entire panel together, and then I decided I really wanted to show the versatility. I haven't done that in a little bit with these. These to me, the A2, the A7, the Slimline, any of the postage products from Waffle Flower are basics for me. They pair beautifully with anything else that you might have in your collection of products and your stash. I love finding ways to utilize them outside of how they were intended or outside of how maybe the other products that I'm pairing with them are intended. So I have cut apart all of my postage stamps now, and now comes the fun part, mixing and matching, seeing how I want to put these together. How do I want to put the background together? And this is really where I play around with the images I've die cut and I plan what I'm going to use. Anything I don't use, I have like a little tray or a little box, rather, of craft stacks from Spellbinders that I like to put any of my little random bits and bobs, and then I can always dive in there later on and pick anything from there and for other projects. I actually find it quite useful in that way. So I'm kind of getting it now where I'm liking it. I think this is going to be the arrangement or close enough to it. We may move a couple of things, and I'm going to work on my background. Now, because we've already cut down our postage collage background, now I want to do something dramatic for the background of this card. And we are going to do that by using another product or another stamp from Tim Holtz. And this is the newsprint and type background. And I'm stamping it with white pigment ink on the So Very Black Simon Says Stamp cardstock. And it's okay if it's not perfect. Again, I kind of had to piece this together on the 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panel, but I love it. And if you want to kind of mute the edges, I love taking a pouncer and just simply pouncing that color all the way around. Gives it a really nice snowy look. You could also put some Simon Says Stamp white spatter on this if you want to distress it even further. I think that would be really fun. Now we're going to start putting together our postage stamps. We're going to put Santa obviously on this tall rectangular stamp. I love that. And we're going to start putting together the other postage stamp. So I'm going to put the tree off to the side of this postage stamp. And we may have to manipulate and move things around a bit. I'm going to play with the seal. I've got my postmarks, my holiday postmarks out here. And this is going to give us the ability to kind of move things around, see how things fit together the best before we glue it all in place and add our sentiment. Also from Holiday Postmarks is the A Merry Christmas to You. That is going to be the actual sentiment of this card. We're going to add a couple of the little seals, and then the Santa Claus post office actually fills in the area really nicely. To give a little added depth and dimension, I am going to pop up my postage stamps on the background. That little bit of lift really helps because even though that background is a text, and it will mute slightly more as that white pigment ink dries, it needs that little bit of lift, I feel like, to just give it, its due, make it stand out, if you will. I am lining up the corners of my postage stamps, so you'll notice that they all kind of meet and line up. kind of like this. And then that little area up above the Christmas tree is perfect for our Santa Claus post office. And I may move, sometimes I end up moving things around. Just however I feel like it kind of flows and lays together the best. I'm using this Simon Says Stamp foam adhesive tape. I love this tape. The backing paper comes off so easily. It's really my favorite foam adhesive roll tape. And I love when my postage stamps elements overlap the other designs. That's really my favorite. It just makes for, it's a fun element, but not necessarily actual postage. I mean, it's not actual postage, but it can be more of a design element is what I want to say. Okay, now comes the holiday postmarks. We're going to stamp Santa Claus post office with lumberjack red onto the Neenah Desert Storm cardstock. We're going to use the coordinating die to die cut this and then use a little ground espresso to grunge up the edges. It's still going to show the beautiful red text, but it obviously works better with the rest of the design having a little bit of that grungy look to it. For our seals, we are going to stamp those on some Schoolhouse red cardstock using clear embossing ink and heat embossing with white embossing powder, and then grunging those up with our Distress Oxide inks as well. For a lot of these pieces, I didn't even get out my MISTI. I simply used my acrylic blocks from Simon Says Stamp to stamp these images on the cardstock and add that white embossing powder. This is going to stand out beautifully against the card, but yet flow because it is in our color palette. For a Merry Christmas to You, we are going to stamp and emboss that on black cardstock and die cut that with the coordinating die to add to our card. Always make sure when you're doing emboss resist that you wipe away with a dry cloth or rag any of the ink sitting on top of the embossed areas. In this case, I don't want to have grungy looking white, so I'm making sure that I'm buffing any of that ground espresso off of that, but it still grunges up the red cardstock beautifully. Look how awesome these little seals look on my card, and they line up, you can see, with the cancellation marks. Now, I did decide my card needed a tiny bit of bling, and so I'm adding some Simon Says Stamp Positively Dazzling Gems in clear and red throughout my card design. So you'll notice that I'm going to put one in the center of the snowflake. We're going to decorate our Christmas tree with some red sparkly ornaments. I put little dabs of glue with the glue press, and then I use my favorite embellishment wand to pick up my gems and pop them right in place on that tree. Using that scrap of black cardstock, I'm simply adding my stamped greeting, as I mentioned earlier, stamping, embossing, die cutting it with the coordinating die, and then we're going to add it right underneath the Santa postage stamp. And that is going to round out and finish the design. We'll glue the entire panel to a white top fold card base, and our card is all finished. Let's work on card number 2. This time we're leaving that stenciled and stamped background as is, and we're going to fill in the space with the tattered Christmas images. This time I am going to go ahead and stamp a few additional things on the background, or at least one additional thing. I'm going to use that postcard stamp from the holiday postmarks to stamp along one side. Next, we're going to do exactly like we did for the first card, where I'm going to stamp my images on the Neenah Desert Storm. We're also going to stamp our sentiment for the card on Neenah Desert Storm with the Lumberjack Plaid Distress Oxide ink. It does have a coordinating die that's going to die cut this beautifully, and we may even have to add a few things here and there. Learning from my previous mistake, I am going to go ahead and use this Tattered rose pencil to color in Santa's face, and we're going to color all of our images. The images are the star of the show, so making sure that we get beautiful coloring here is going to be so important. I love this picket fence. It is one of my favorites just because on craft cardstock, it gives you that beautiful white effect while maintaining that prim craft look. Then we're going to go in with our Lumberjack Plaid Distress Pencil, add a little color to Santa's jacket and hat. We're going to be using lots of reds and greens. I kept my color palette pretty traditional for my cards, and maybe even pull in a little festive berries for the lighter areas in some places on the jacket for a little bit of a two-tone look. Look at little Santa come to life. Noticed a couple of spots around the edge that I felt like I missed, so I'm going to go ahead and go in with a little color there. Try to pinken up the cheeks just a tad. And then we're going to move on to our next image. For this one, I'm going to color in my berries again with Lumberjack Plaid, Rustic Wilderness for the leaves. We may pull in a little additional color. These leaves, probably we could shade a bit more if we wanted to. Oh, I used a little festive berry for the ribbons coming out of here, so they're slightly lighter than the berry color. And again, maintaining that pencil sharpener close by so that I can constantly sharpen my pencils. And I did want to darken the little pink of Santa's cheeks. So down at the base is where I'm laying down the majority of my Rustic Wilderness. And then we'll pull in a little bit darker color out to the tips of those leaves. I really like the coloring of these leaves. That little lighter area is perfect. For the stocking, we're going to do a nice little white cuff around the top. We're going to do some green patches and then do some red for the stocking itself with Lumberjack Plaid. The candy cane is going to be fun. Those bigger white areas on our candy cane, we're going to leave white, and then the darker black work areas are going to be Lumberjack Plaid. So the red shows up nicely over the dark areas of that. And again, with the bigger area of the stocking, I went in with Lumberjack Plaid and then shaded with Festive Berries. So we have the dark and the light coloring, little additional shading. Look how cute that is. Okay, so a little bit of red in all of these darker areas, really quick. And at first you think it's not going to show up great, but once you get the white in there, it really pops, and the candy cane is so, so cute. So we're going to go with a little bit of green. It's kind of like a little check ribbon, if you will. So I did a little bit of light and a little bit of dark. That really offsets the reds in the candy cane nicely. And then near the base, there's like some little berries and things. So I'll just do a little Festive Berries there. Okay, now it's time to start adding our images to our background. And I am going to start by placing all of these images that we've just die cut with the coordinating dies in place first, and then we will add anything additional that we need. So think seals, sentiments, and anything in addition to the sentiments, which I will make a little adjustment as I'm working to the sentiment block. So the smallest little area down there below where the candy cane is going is not really big enough for any of the images per se. I had considered maybe stamping and coloring the Santa hat, and it just wasn't working for this card, so I'm going to leave it off. Let's go ahead and attach our sentiment and then see what else we can add instead. In this case, it's going to be a seal is going to fit much better than trying to make one of the other larger images work. I've left a little bit of area up at the top, and I ultimately decided that the letter holiday postmark stamp, it's kind of hidden back there, is going to be so cute, and it ended up being one of my favorite parts of this card. So we're going to stamp this and get these additional pieces stamped and embossed and added to our card. We're stamping letter on the Schoolhouse Red cardstock and the seal. We're going to emboss both with white embossing powder, heat set and die cut, and then grunge them up. I'm going to line up the dies with these postmarks, tape them in place, add that ground espresso distress oxide ink around the edges, buff away that excess ink, add these both to my card panel. Then we are going to stamp another background just like we did for the first card on black cardstock with that white pigment ink using the newsprint and type text background. I felt like that worked really well for both of these card designs. We'll add a few additional gem embellishments. We've popped up the entire panel with foam adhesive on that newsprint kind of background image. This time I opted not to distress the edges more with additional white ink, mostly because this takes up more surface area and I wanted to see a little bit more of the black cardstock. And that is it. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these 2 cards featuring Tim Holtz and Simon Says Stamp Christmas stamps and coordinating dies. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much for joining me today. I truly love sharing creativity with this amazing community of crafters. A special thank you goes out to my wonderful Patreon members. I appreciate you all so much. If you'd like to join us on Patreon, you'll find the link in the video description below. Patreon is a private community where you can support more of what I do and enjoy exclusive content, behind the scenes updates, and extra perks. There's something for everyone, and we'd love to have you join our growing community. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, click that like button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.